Zuri Adeyemi stepped out of the car and took a slow breath as she looked at the grand mansion glowing with Christmas light. Victoria Island was always beautiful this time of year, but tonight the air felt strangely heavy. She smoothed her dress, lifted her chin, and walked in with her usual quiet confidence. It was the annual Adeyemi Christmas Eve celebration, a night that was supposed to be full of laughter, food, and family warmth. But the moment she stepped inside, she felt something shift. Teo, her husband, barely met her eyes. He brushed past her with a quick, distracted, "You're here," like she was an afterthought. For a second, she wondered if she had imagined it. But then she saw Mama Ronk near the staircase, stiff like a queen guarding her throne. The older woman gave Zuri a long, cold glare before leaning toward her sisters-in-law, whispering behind her face. They all turned to look at Zuri with the same sharp, judging expression. Zuri felt it in her bones. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Still, she smiled politely at everyone, greeting uncles, aunties, cousins, pretending everything was normal. She moved gracefully through the hall, offering compliments and light conversation. On the inside, she was alert, watching, listening. Each time she glanced at Teo, he looked away, too quickly. His shoulders were tense, his jaw tight. He wasn't acting like the man she married, not even close. But if they expected fear from her, they would be disappointed. Zuri carried herself with elegance and calm, even when the room felt loaded with secret. Later she would think about this moment and whisper to herself, "I didn't know I was walking straight into a setup." Dinner had just been served when the room suddenly shifted. People were laughing, clinking glasses, passing roasted turkey and jollof rice across the long, decorated table. Christmas music played softly in the background. It should have been a peaceful night, but Zuri felt that strange tightness in her chest again, the one she'd been ignoring since she walked in. Teo sat beside her, stiff and restless. He wasn't eating. He kept tapping his fork against the plate, glancing at his mother, then at Zuri, then back at his mother again. Mama Ronk gave him a small nod, as if giving permission. And then it happened. Teo pushed his chair back loudly and stood up so quickly the whole table went silent. All eyes turned to him. He cleared his throat dramatically, pretending to look emotional, but Zuri knew that performance all too well. "I have something to say," he announced, voice shaking, but not from pain, from excitement. Zuri felt every heartbeat in her ears. Teo reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a thick brown envelope. He held it up like it was some kind of trophy. "I can't do this anymore. I'm done pretending." "Zuri," he paused for maximum effect. "You are not wife material. You never were. So here, these are divorce papers." A few gasps filled the room, but shock wasn't the main reaction. Approval was. The aunties exchanged satisfied looks. His cousins smirked. His sisters looked relieved. And Mama Ronk? She leaned back in her chair, smiling like she had been waiting for this moment for years. She even clapped once. "Finally," she said loudly. "Our son is free." Zuri stayed seated, completely still, completely silent. She didn't blink. She didn't gasp. She didn't grab her chest like they expected. She simply looked at Teo, her expression calm, too calm. That calmness irritated him instantly. More whispers started around the table. "Is she in shock? Why is she not crying? I knew she wasn't good enough." Teo slid the papers across the table toward her, watching her face, hungry for humiliation. "Take them," he snapped. "You can sign them now. Let everyone witness this." He wanted a scene. He wanted tears. He wanted to crush her publicly. But Zuri only folded her hands gently in her lap. She didn't touch the papers. She didn't open her mouth. She didn't give him a single reaction. Instead, she sat there like a queen who refused to bow. The silence grew uncomfortable. Even the children stopped eating and stared. Teo's face twisted with confusion. This wasn't going the way he planned. Mama Ronk leaned forward, annoyed. "What is wrong with you? Say something." Still nothing. Zuri lifted her eyes slowly, meeting Teo's with a calm, unreadable expression. And for the first time that night, he swallowed hard. He didn't like this version of her. He preferred the Zuri who stayed quiet from fear, not power. People kept watching her, waiting for her to break, waiting for her to cry, waiting for her to fall apart. But she didn't. She just sat there, graceful and unbothered, proving with her silence that his attempt to humiliate her wasn't worth it. And that made the room's tension explode into something deeper, something electric. Everyone sensed it. Zuri wasn't defeated. She was waiting. Zuri kept her eyes on the table while the whispers continued, but inside her mind, old memories rose like waves, strong, painful, and strangely empowering. She didn't react because she had already lived through far worse moments than this public humiliation. She had learned over the years that silence could be stronger than shouting. And tonight, her silence was armor. She remembered the early days of their marriage, when Teo dreamed of expanding his small bakery. He had big ideas, but no savings, no plan, and no investor willing to take the risk. He cried to her one night, saying he felt like a failure. Zuri, wanting to support her husband, transferred nearly all her personal savings, money she had been keeping for her future, and funded the expansion quietly. She didn't ask for credit. She didn't tell anyone. She only wanted to see him succeed. Teo proudly told people he built the business from the ground up, but Zuri kept smiling. She didn't need applause. Then came the financial troubles with his family. When Mama Ronk secretly mortgaged her home without telling anyone and risked losing it, who solved it? Zuri. She used a loan she qualified for because of her strong career record and paid off the debt. She never told a soul, not even her own parents. She only wanted peace in the family. When Teo's younger brother had legal problems, who paid for the lawyer? Zuri again. She simply said, "It's fine. Family is family." But every time she gave, they took a little more of her peace. She remembered the endless emotional manipulation, how Teo would belittle her accomplishments, calling her too ambitious or too cold. He complained when she worked late, even though her salary kept their lifestyle afloat. He accused her of acting like a man when she made decisions he didn't understand. Yet, whenever he needed money, advice, or connections, he ran straight to her. One night, she found messages on his phone, long conversations with another woman. When she confronted him, he twisted the story until she began doubting her own sanity. "You're imagining things," he said. "You're always overreacting." He didn't say sorry. He didn't explain. He just blamed her. That was the moment she realized something important. Teo didn't love her. He loved control. And once she understood that truth, her heart stopped breaking. She stopped trying to fix him. She stopped hoping he would change. Instead, she quietly started protecting herself, legally, financially, emotionally. She documented everything. She saved every receipt, every message, every transfer she made. She made sure that every sacrifice she had made was recorded somewhere safe. So now, as Teo stood in this dining room shouting and waving divorce papers, Zuri felt nothing but clarity. They thought she was silent because she was shocked. No. She was silent because she was prepared. They thought this was the moment she would crumble. But this was the moment she had been waiting for. Her calm wasn't weakness. It was strategy. The room was still tense when the front doors suddenly opened. The sound echoed through the mansion, loud enough to stop conversations and fork movement. Everyone turned their heads at the same time, and Zuri felt a wave of cold air brush her skin. A woman stepped inside, tall, bold, perfectly dressed in a sparkling evening gown that shimmered under the chandelier lights. She moved like someone who believed the world belonged to her. And on her neck, Zuri froze for the first time that night. The diamonds. Her diamonds. The necklace Teo claimed went missing months ago. The woman smiled confidently, like she was arriving at her own event. "Sorry I'm late," she said, her South African accent cutting clearly through the room. Traffic on Ozumba was insane. Zuri didn't move. She didn't blink. But her mind sharpened like a blade. Teo's face changed instantly, shock, guilt, fear, all mixing together. "Lerato, what are you doing here?" His voice cracked. Lerato Mbeki from Johannesburg. The woman Zuri had once suspected but never confronted. Now she was right here, walking into the Adeyemi Christmas Eve dinner like she belonged. She moved straight toward Teo and placed a hand on his shoulder, then kissed his cheek right in front of everyone. Gasps rippled across the table. Even the servers froze. Then Lerato turned her eyes toward Zuri with a careless smile, the kind used to provoke. "So," she said loudly, "let's finish this quickly. We still have our own celebrations tonight." The words sliced through the room like a knife. Teo stepped away from her, embarrassed, but it was too late. The truth was out. Mama Ronk didn't even try to hide her joy. Her smile grew wider, proud and satisfied. She looked at Lerato with approval, as if this was the daughter-in-law she preferred all along. Some guests whispered in shock. Others covered their mouths. A few exchanged knowing looks, like they had suspected this affair but never expected to see it displayed so boldly. But the one person who didn't react was Zuri. She didn't stand. She didn't cry. She didn't even reach for the divorce papers sitting untouched in front of her. She simply watched Lerato with a calm, distant expression, almost as if she was observing a stranger telling a joke during dinner. And that calmness, started to bother people more than anything else. Mama Ronk leaned forward, squinting at Zuri like she was trying to read her thoughts. Teo shifted nervously, fidgeting with the envelope of divorce papers. Even Lerato, who came in confidently, began to lose a bit of her boldness under Zuri's steady, unbothered gaze. It wasn't the silence of a defeated woman. It was the silence of a woman who knew something. The air grew heavier. The tension became almost physical, thick enough to feel like smoke in the room. People expected Zuri to shout, break down, storm out, but she didn't move. Her stillness made everyone uncomfortable, especially the ones who wanted her to fall apart. Something about her calm felt dangerous. Something about her silence felt powerful. And without saying a single word, Zuri made everyone in that room wonder the same thing. What is she planning? For a long moment, Zuri stayed seated, letting the whispers swirl around her like smoke. Teo stood there holding the divorce papers. Lorado stood behind him shining in stolen diamonds, and Mama Ronk watched with hungry eyes, waiting for Zuri to break. But instead, Zuri slowly pushed her chair back and rose to her feet. The movement was so calm, so gentle, yet it made the entire room freeze. She reached for her handbag, an elegant black leather purse she had carried quietly all evening. People leaned forward without realizing it. Even the waiters paused mid-step. Something about her composure made everyone uneasy, like they were watching the beginning of a storm they didn't see coming. Zuri unzipped the bag with steady fingers. No rush, no fear, no panic. She reached inside and pulled out a thick, neatly arranged folder. Documents, emails, screenshots, stamped papers, and something that looked suspiciously like a legal envelope. A murmur moved through the crowd. Mama Ronk frowned. What is that? Teo blinked rapidly. Zuri, what are you doing? Lorado rolled her eyes, trying to act unfazed, but Zuri noticed her stiffen. Zuri placed the stack of documents on the table with a soft thud. That sound alone made the entire dining room go silent. Then she looked straight at Teo and smiled. Not a sweet smile, not a hurt one, but the kind of smile that said, I'm ready now. Before you finalize anything, Teo, she said softly, you should know the truth. The room went dead quiet. The children, who had been giggling over Christmas cookies minutes earlier, stopped mid-bite. A baby in someone's arms stopped crying. One of the aunties froze with her spoon halfway to her mouth. Even the Christmas music playing in the background suddenly felt too loud. Teo swallowed hard. What truth? Zuri picked up the first set of papers. Bank statements highlighted in yellow. She didn't open them yet. She simply tapped the top page gently with her finger. For years, she said, her voice steady, I have kept records of everything I paid for, everything I invested in, and everything I protected. Another ripple of whispers. Zuri lifted the next stack, printed screenshots of messages, transaction receipts, financial reports, and police-stamped documents, every page organized like she had spent months preparing. Because she had. People craned their necks to see. Zuri, Mama Ronk snapped, her voice cracking. Stop whatever performance this is. Zuri didn't even look at her. She kept her eyes on Teo, whose face was slowly losing color. You brought me divorce papers tonight, she said calmly. But what I brought, she tapped the folder again, is the truth you thought I would never find. The truth you thought I was too blind to see. A loud, sharp gasp shot across the table. Lorado stepped back instinctively, clutching the diamond necklace. Teo whispered, Zuri, what is all that? Zuri gave him a small, devastating smile. Your real future, Teo. And trust me, you're not going to like it. The room stayed frozen. Every breath held, every eye locked on. And that was the exact moment the power shifted. Everyone could feel it. Even Teo. Zuri took a slow breath and looked around the room, letting every pair of eyes settle on her. The tension was so thick it felt like smoke, and she could almost hear Teo's heartbeat pounding in his chest. She opened the folder, picking up the first document with deliberate calm. The silence in the dining room grew heavier. Let's start with the bakery, she said softly, almost like she was speaking to herself, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The business you've been bragging about, the one you said you built from the ground up, belongs to me, 63%, to be exact. Murmurs rippled around the table. Teo's mouth opened, then closed. He looked like he had just swallowed something bitter. What are you talking about? He stammered. I invested heavily when you were failing, Zuri continued, her voice steady, unwavering. Every expansion, every loan, every renovation. You think it was all your hard work? It was my money that kept it afloat. Your name is on the storefronts, but I own the company. And every single decision you've made was under my guidance. Teo's face went pale. Lorado shifted nervously behind him. Mama Ronk's lips pressed into a tight line, her eyes narrowing. And that's not all, Zuri said, flipping to the next set of documents. I also have proof of your tax fraud. Fake invoices. Money you funneled to Lorado. Every transaction documented. Every lie recorded. She let the words hang in the air. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Teo tried to speak, but no sound came out. He reached for the papers, but Zuri held them just out of reach, a quiet command in her eyes telling him he had no control here. You thought you could try to humiliate me tonight, she said, but I legally protected my assets months ago. Before you even dreamed of divorce, I made sure I could never be blindsided by greed and lie. Mama Ronk's face turned red, and then purple. She shook with rage, her hands trembling as she gripped the table. How dare you, she shouted. That money, our family's money, was meant for Teo. Zuri's gaze stayed locked on her mother-in-law, unflinching. I never touched your money. I helped your family survive. But when greed drives people, they forget who actually saved them. Guests started pulling out their phones, recording everything in secret. They whispered to each other, astonished at the revelations. Some looked at Teo with disbelief. Some looked at Zuri with admiration. Zuri flipped through more papers, screenshots, bank statements, legal filings, all proving every word she said. Each piece of evidence chipped away at Teo's bravado, leaving him exposed in front of everyone. "And just so it's clear," she said, closing the folder with a soft thud, "I own this business. I control it. And I know exactly where every penny went, including the ones you tried to hide from me." Teo's face was ashen. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He tried to speak, but his words felt empty in the heavy silence of the room. The humiliation he had hoped for turned back on him, and this time, there was no escape. Zuri's calm, controlled voice left everyone in no doubt. The woman they had underestimated was far stronger, and far smarter, than anyone in that room had realized. Zuri took a deep breath, letting the room's tension settle around her like a thick fog. Teo's face was still pale, Lorado's smile had disappeared, and Mama Ronk was shaking with barely contained rage. Every eye in the room was fixed on Zuri, waiting, expecting her next move. And Zuri knew exactly what she needed to do. She reached into her bag again and carefully pulled out a crisp, official-looking envelope. The seal had a golden emblem, and the name on it made the room go instantly silent. Chief Kruma, the major investor from Ghana. Zuri held it up so everyone could see. "This," she said slowly, letting the word hang in the air, "is a letter from Chief Kruma." She opened it and read aloud, her voice steady, confident, and commanding. "Effective immediately, full control of the Adeyemi bakery chain is hereby transferred to Zuri Adeyemi. She is appointed managing director of the company. This decision reflects her proven track record, strategic vision, and leadership that has been the foundation of every business success." The room went completely still. Even the children stopped moving, their eyes wide. Teo's jaw dropped, and for a moment he looked like he might collapse. Lorado clutched her diamond necklace, unsure what to do. Mama Ronk's face turned an alarming shade of red, and she shook her head as if denying reality could make it disappear. A low murmur began to ripple through the guests. "So she was the real boss," someone whispered. Another voice added, "I knew it. I just knew she was the one running everything." Zuri smiled, a soft but deadly smile. "Every expansion, every profit, every strategy you thought Teo made on his own, that was me. I was the silent brain behind every success. And now the world knows it officially." Teo tried to speak, to protest, to argue, but nothing came out. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The envelope in Zuri's hands was more than just paper. It was the final proof of the truth he had tried to hide, the final confirmation that all his bragging had been built on her hard work and his empty work. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of family members who had mocked or underestimated her. "You all doubted me," she said, voice calm, cutting, precise. "You assumed I was weak, that I would be silent and powerless. But every single step I took was deliberate. And tonight the truth is out." Guests whispered again, some recording on their phones, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Teo's mother, red-faced and trembling, opened her mouth, but Zuri didn't wait for her. She placed the letter down carefully on the table and folded her hand. The energy in the room had shifted completely. No longer was this about humiliation or revenge. It was about recognition, respect, and power. Zuri had transformed from the quiet, underestimated wife into the undeniable force who controlled the company, and everyone could see it. And as murmurs of awe and disbelief spread through the room, Zuri finally allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. The woman who had been underestimated, overlooked, and disrespected was now not only standing her ground, she was on top. For the first time that night, she felt truly untouchable. The room was electric with silence. Teo's face had gone pale, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to find words that wouldn't come. Every plan he had made to humiliate Zuri had collapsed in front of the entire family. Even Lorado, the woman who had come in so boldly with stolen diamonds and a fake sense of power, stepped back slowly, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. She didn't want to be part of this public downfall. Teo finally tried to speak, his voice breaking, trembling, weak. "Zuri, but no words would come. He opened his mouth again and again, but each attempt sounded hollow. Every lie, every manipulation, every secret he had relied on to maintain control had evaporated in the cold reality Zuri had brought into the room. Mama Ronk, furious, tried to raise her voice, to shame Zuri publicly like she always thought she could. "How dare you? After everything," she started, her hands shaking with rage. Zuri didn't flinch. Calmly, she reached into her bag and pulled out a neatly organized set of papers. She handed them over directly to Mama Ronk. "Here," she said softly, "proof of every mortgage payment I made for your home over the last 2 years." Mama Ronk snatched the papers, her hands trembling as she flipped through them. Numbers, dates, receipts. Everything Zuri had done to quietly support the family, to keep them afloat, was documented. and none of it was acknowledged before. I was never the problem, Zuri said, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut steel. She looked at Teo and Mama Ronk both. Your greed was. Teo's face twisted. He had tried to control her, humiliate her, and make her feel powerless. But in this moment, she held all the power. Every whisper, every sideways glance, every gasping guest was a reminder of the truth he had tried to bury. Zuri stepped closer to Teo, her eyes steady, unwavering. She picked up the divorce papers he had brought to shame her and held them up for everyone to see. Then she smiled, not cruelly but decisively. You tried to divorce me, she said, her voice carrying through the silent room. But I already divorced your access to my life. The words landed like a hammer. Lorato looked down at her shoes, embarrassed, unsure where to stand. Guests leaned in, recording, whispering, trying to process the power shift happening before them. Teo's ego, which had once been inflated by lies and half-truths, was crumbling in real time. Zuri didn't wait for applause or approval. She didn't even glance at the envelope from Chief Kruma. She simply stood there, calm, collected, and untouchable. Every ounce of control had shifted. The man who tried to humiliate her was exposed, powerless, and broken, while she remained composed, in charge, and undeniably victorious. The room, once filled with whispers and judgment, now echoed a single undeniable truth. Zuri Adeyemi had won. Zuri gathered her handbag and stood tall, her posture flawless, her calmness unshakable. The room, still buzzing with tension and shock, seemed to recognize the shift in power. Guests instinctively moved out of her way as she began walking toward the grand double doors of the mansion. Every step she took echoed softly on the polished marble floor, but it felt like thunder to anyone watching. Some relatives whispered hurried apologies under their breath. I didn't know. We were wrong to doubt you. Others simply stared, their eyes wide with admiration, realizing for the first time just how strong, smart, and untouchable Zuri truly was. The whispers blended into a low hum of awe, a quiet acknowledgement that the woman they had underestimated had conquered the night. Teo stumbled forward, tears welling in his eyes. His proud, confident demeanor from earlier had vanished completely. Zuri, please, I can change. Give me another chance. I swear I'll. His voice cracked, and he dropped to his knees desperate. But the man who had tried to control her, humiliate her, and erase her contributions was no longer in charge. Zuri stopped for a moment and turned slowly to face him. Her expression was calm, her eyes clear and strong, filled with the certainty of someone who had already won. Teo, she said softly but firmly, this Christmas I choose myself. Those words landed with a weight that no one in the room could ignore. They weren't just a refusal, they were a declaration of independence, a proclamation of self-respect and power. Teo's shoulders slumped, his tears falling freely now, while Lorato quietly backed away, knowing she had no place in this life anymore. Mama Ronk's face was a storm of disbelief, frustration, and helplessness, but Zuri didn't glance at her. She didn't need to. The message had already been delivered. As she walked past the stunned guests, she held herself with an elegance that left everyone silent. She didn't hurry. She didn't look back. She simply moved forward, each step a reminder that she was in control of her own destiny. Whispers followed her, admiration, awe, and the occasional regret from those who had sided with Teo. The front doors opened, and Zuri stepped out into the crisp Lagos night. The Christmas lights from the mansion reflected on the wet pavement, twinkling like stars. She breathed in the cool air and felt it fill her with clarity and freedom. The night belonged to her now. Not Teo, not Lorato, not anyone who had tried to hold her back. She walked away without anger, without revenge, and without a backward glance. In that moment, Zuri Adeyemi wasn't just leaving a house. She was leaving behind a life of manipulation, disrespect, and control. She was stepping into a future she owned, a future built on her strength, intelligence, and courage. And as she disappeared into the quiet streets of Victoria Island, her presence left a message for everyone who had doubted her. The woman they tried to break had emerged stronger than ever. Dignity intact, power reclaimed, and a new life waiting. Zuri had chosen herself, and nothing would ever take that away. 1 year later, Zuri Adeyemi's life looked nothing like the tense, humiliating Christmas Eve she had endured. She was now a respected CEO, running one of West Africa's fastest-growing bakery chains with confidence and vision. Every decision she made, every strategy she implemented, was a reminder of her intelligence, her perseverance, and the quiet strength she had always carried. People no longer doubted her. They followed her lead, admired her insight, and respected her for the woman she had always been. This Christmas, Zuri chose to celebrate differently. Instead of a mansion filled with whispers and judgment, she opened the doors of her company's community center to children from low-income neighborhoods in Lagos. The air was filled with laughter, music, and the delicious smell of freshly baked treats. She handed out gifts, served meals, and watched as their faces lit up with joy. The gratitude in their eyes reminded her of what mattered most: purpose, kindness, and the freedom to live on her own terms. Zuri's life was peaceful now, but it was also powerful. She had built a future on her own strength, unshackled from the lies, greed, and manipulation of the past. Her mornings began with planning, not anxiety. Her evenings ended with gratitude, not resentment. Every step she took was hers alone, guided by experience, resilience, and the lessons she had learned the hard way. As she looked around at the smiling children, the warmth of the moment wrapped around her like a blanket, and she whispered quietly to herself, remembering the woman she had been 1 year ago. That night they tried to bury me, but they didn't know. I was the seed, and like a seed she had grown stronger, taller, and unstoppable. Her life was no longer defined by anyone else's control, only by her own courage and vision.